They, well, they called me. I was on my way in. They told me. That's what I told them. Just think of the book. Don't worry about the lights. Don't worry about the microphone. I mean, just make sure you clean up. No. Somewhat. Somewhat. You know, we're doing this for the second time. Great school in that spot. I don't know which one. Well, that's the top of the number. And then the other one's being done on the 10th. Yeah. Those are under here. How would you do this? Somehow I don't think it was, but okay. Well, okay. Yeah, we should do that. They were. I had to fix the toes.
Getting you watched it lately, I see.
I have to, hello, everybody.
Somebody go first.
Well, they were here.
I'm gonna leave it here. Yeah.
No.
Oh, no, no, Shalom Aleichem. Just right here. Okay, that's it. Our beats. Our beats.
Yeah, I'll change it.
Oh, yes. Were you here this afternoon? Were you here this afternoon?
Show them, the security. Make sure.
I did take a little.
I would have loved to.
I thought that was the key. Right.
So who am I calling?
Right? Don't forget.
Yes.
Don't forget.
I know you guys need to give each other.
Don't forget. So we can do all these other things. So what am I gonna do? And I said, yes.
Over 600.
My talk tomorrow. Let me see. I think it might be.
I don't care. I don't care.
2.5 pages.
I don't care.
I did cut it down since you wanted to. This one, you just want to take it. Stevie, how you doing? Okay.
Every day. Says you could.
You can't do this now. We'll do it.
No, I know. Okay,
So you'll be, you're out. So Rabbi Berger will be there.
where's our Foxwoods trip? Where's our Foxwoods trip?
I know.
Guess what I think? Right.
I guess I should say good Yom Tov, everybody. Yom Tov, Yontif, Yontif, Yom Tov. Yom Tov means good day because we have a holiday tonight, which is Shavuot. No more counting the Omer. So we actually begin our service with the Baruch Hu on page 28. If I could ask you to rise, please.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevarach. Baruch Adonai HaMevarach Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue silently on page 28. Baruch atah
Umavir Yom Mevi Laila Umavdil Ben Yom Ben Laila Adonai Tzebaot Shemo El Chai V'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai
Shemo.
Amari Varabi Abat Olam Beit Yisrael Yihem Chayeinu V'yorech Yameinu V'hem Negei Yamam V'Layla V'Abahatcha Al Tasim Mimenu Le'olamim Baruch Ata Adonai
Shemo.
Ohev Amo Yisrael Shema
Yisrael Adonai Adonai V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol avavcha b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'otecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha v'balaktecha v'derech Uvishakbecha uvekumecha, okishatam liot al yadecha, vayula totapod bein einecha, ukitavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha. Lemanye buyemechem vime benechem al harama shinish ba Adonai lavotechem latet lohem k'mer shemayim al haaretz.
Continuing on page 31.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'amatar lehem v'yasu lahem tzitzit al kanfei bigdehem ledorotam v'natnu al tzitzit hakana patil techelet v'haya lachem letzitzit uritem oto uzachartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam v'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareihem leman tizkru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher otzeiti etchem meretz Mitzrayim liot lachem leElohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Grammar class, page 32.
Umalchuto b'ratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe b'nei Yisrael echanu shirah
בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נוראתי לא תוסף אליו. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה, והעליינו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. תברא את יעקב וגאולו מהחזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני כל ישראל.
Let's read together on the top of page 33. Help us, Adonai, to lie down in peace and awaken us again, our sovereign to life. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel. Save us because of your mercy. Shield us from enemies and pestilence, from starvation, sword, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, O God, who watches over us and delivers us, our gracious and merciful ruler. Guard our coming and our going. Grant us life and peace now and always. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Praise are you, Adonai, who spreads the shelter of peace over us, over all his people Israel, and over Jerusalem.
Ushmor tzeiteinu uboenu l'chaim u'l'shalom me'ata v'yad olam. Ufros aleinu sukat shalom mehecha baruch atah Adonai. Aporei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim.
Amen. And then we rise now and we repeat after the Chazan for the Yom Tov phrase.
Vayidaber Moshe et moadei Adonai el bnei Yisrael.
V'daber Moshe et moadei Adonai el bnei Yisrael.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Alma divrachirutei v'yamlit malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayechol beit Yisrael v'hagala u'bizman karib
Imru, Amen.
Amen yesh me'Rabba mevarach ve'olam
Maya Yitbarach.
Yishtabach v'bar v'druma v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei d'Kodesha b'richu le'yeh min chavachata v'shirata Ushpachata v'nechamata Damiram v'alma v'yimru Amen.
So remain standing for the Amidah. It's Yom Tov, so it's 41b through page 44. And when you're done, you may be seated. 41b through page 44, you may be seated when you're done. And now for Kaddish Shalom on page. Where is it? Kaddish Shalom?
48.
48, thank you.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yomadi brachi rutei v'yamak malchutei b'chayechona v'mechona v'chadechol be'Yisrael. V'agalav izman kariv v'yimaru.
Amen. Yeshmei Rabba Mevorah.
Le'olam
Yitbarach.
Barak v'yishtabak v'bar v'roma v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'talev v'talav shmei kudishah. Berichu le'elam mikva v'chata b'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata damiram v'yama v'yimru.
Amen.
Amen. Tikabal sloton avoton d'chol Yisrael kadam avohon v'bishmai v'yimru.
Amen.
Amen. Yehesh namarava mitchemai v'chaim alei v'chol Yisrael v'yimru.
Amen.
Amen. Oseh shalom v'imrom avu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru.
And now we rise for the Kiddush, which, because it's Yom Tov, it's on page 50.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabanu mikol ha'am v'romamanu mikol ha'asham v'kidshanu v'mitzvotav v'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu v'yava Moadim l'simcha chagim uzmanim l'sason et yom chag hashavuot hazeh zman matan torateinu mikra kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim kivanu v'achar taviotanu ki dahashta mikol ha'amim moadei kadshecha b'simcha v'sason hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh Yisrael hazmanim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
Amen. You may be seated.
I purposely want you to know I skipped the Saturday night part because it's too early. So
Yes. The rabbi knows.
you can start Yom Tov early, but you can't end Shabbat early. So we're on that edge. Okay. All right.
Gotcha.
You want to count the Omer?
Yes, of course, we're done with the Omer. Can you imagine that since Pesach, we've counted 49 full days. So they say that you have to start Shavuot at nighttime because it says 7 complete weeks. So technically for another 15 minutes, we're still in
So
Shavuot
you can count
mode.
the 49th
I
day.
mean, almost in Shavuot mode. So no, it says 7 complete weeks, which means you have to really wait till it's nighttime before it's Shavuot. So that's what we're doing tonight. But at this time, I'd like to call up Esther Kaufman and Steve Ring to be able to give out some exciting awards. And we can be right down here in number 4.
I'm trying.
Oh, it's at number 5.
Not working.
Is it 4 or 5?
5. There.
course, Esther represents the Sisterhood and Steve Ring represents the men's club.
It gives me great pleasure to be able to present the Sisterhood Scholarship this evening. The Sisterhood Scholarship is given to a student who is completing their freshman year in college, has good academic standing, and whose parents are members of the Temple, Sisterhood, or Men's Club. The applicants are asked to write a 500 to 750 word essay answering the question, how did your Jewish education influence your Jewish involvement during your freshman year in college? This year, we are presenting our scholarship to a very deserving young woman, Shira Zimmerman. In high school, Shira was very involved in the Jewish community. She elaborated on that involvement in her essay saying, I was a peer leader for Jewish Teen Initiative for 2 years, a member and board member of BBYO, as well as a chairperson for the regional and international board of BBYO. Based on her involvement in Jewish activities throughout her high school years, Shira went off to college with a strong passion to get involved in Judaism on campus. Shira is attending the University of New Hampshire, which has a very small Jewish population. She knew that it would be difficult to meet other Jewish students on campus, but she was determined. Shira began her fall semester volunteering at the Hebrew School at Chabad in Durham, New Hampshire. This volunteer experience led to her attending many events hosted by Seacoast Chabad. Getting involved with Chabad allowed Shira to meet other Jewish students, expand her knowledge on Judaism, and eased her adjustment to college. In her essay, Shira stated, because of Chabad, I have found a community and safe space on campus. Starting her sophomore year in college, Shira will be a Hebrew school teacher at Chabad on Sunday mornings. To summarize Shira's freshman year, she declared, I've had the pleasure of being so involved in my Jewish community on campus and hope to expand it even more in the future. Shira has made strong statements about how important her Jewish identity is in her life. How lucky we are to have young women like Shira to represent the Jewish people now and in the future. Shira, you want to come forward? The Sisterhood of Temple Ner Tamid is impressed with your endeavors and is pleased to be able to support your continued success with this scholarship.
Thank you so much.
Is there anybody from the Cohn family here tonight? Benjamin Cohn. Cohn family. All right, well, we'll read it anyway and we'll accept on his behalf. By the way, I don't wear a sport coat very often. Thank you. For the past 52 years, since 1970, as part of our commitment to the youth of Temple, the Men's Club has awarded scholarships to our Temple youth who have been active in Jewish, Temple, and community life while excelling academically and scholastically. With this year's scholarship awards, we will have given out a total of $153,550 to 323 of our Temple youth. And we know every single one of them. Our award criteria is based on 2 equal parts. One part is the student's Judaic achievements and accomplishments, and the other part is the student's academic achievements and scholastic accomplishments. Neither their parents' financial situation nor their parents' involvement, contributions, or positions in the Temple or Men's Club or Sisterhood is ever considered in our assessment. Our scholarship bylaws ensure that all Temple youth who apply and meet our scholarship criteria will receive an award. The amount of award money we have available to each year varies based on the success of our auction and our May raffle. So your continued support for our auction and our raffle, shameless plug here, enables us to sustain our scholarship awards each year. Once again, we had a successful fundraising year and we thank you. I'd like to thank the members of this year's scholarship committee for their efforts and dedication. Russell Grossman, Mark Rudin, Richard Strauss, and Alan Teitelbaum. Now our awards winners. As I read your name, please come forward, receive your plaque. So But let me say about Ben Cohn. Ben's the son of Jeffrey and Carrie Cohn, went to Massachusetts High School. Will be attending Florida Atlantic University to study finance, to be a financial advisor, and he'll join his sister at Florida Atlantic. And his other sister goes to Vanderbilt. So with that, we'll just leave it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Esther. So thank you, by the way, to the recipients, and thank you to the Women's League and the Men's Club for giving out those awards. You know, it just shows we have a really active synagogue here, and that very pleased that we can afford to give out these scholarships, and that we're a vibrant temple here. And it's pretty exciting to be part of this establishment for that.
And since it is Shavuot, it's appropriate to study for a little bit. So are you guys, did you bring your sleeping bags? Good. Because we're going to have a very short study tonight, because I see you're already starting to fall asleep. So I'm going to offer this little bit of study for us all to consider tonight. Telling the story at Sinai. And what we received at Sinai was a freely available resource. Of course, you all know what that is, right? The freely available resource that we received at Sinai, of course, is nothing more than the Torah, right? Many rabbinic sources ask the question, why did revelation happen in the wilderness? Why not have this momentous event occur in the land of Israel? Why not? The Midrash below is one of the many that focuses the importance of Torah as something that is ownerless and open to all, like the wilderness. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai, lama b'midbar Sinai. And God spoke to Moses in the Sinai wilderness, as we see in Numbers. Why the Sinai wilderness? Just as fire, water, and wilderness are free to all inhabitants of the world, so too are words of Torah free to them. As it says in Isaiah 55:1, "O all who are thirsty, come for water, even if you have no money." Another explanation, and God spoke to Moses in the Sinai wilderness, anyone who does not make themselves ownerless like the wilderness cannot acquire the wisdom and the Torah. Therefore, it says the Sinai wilderness. So the idea of Torah is there for the taking. For anyone who wishes, shapes a vision of Torah is something open and accessible. We know that many people do not feel that way. Ancient texts are often seen as esoteric and hard to engage with. If we believe that Torah is truly open to all, how might that shift the way we talk about Torah and study it and then share it? Maybe we would include Torah in more areas of our lives, or perhaps feel more comfortable telling others about ideas and insights, or Torah encounters that we personally have experienced. And perhaps the quest to be ownerless challenges us to examine the other demands that lay claim to our attention and to our time, or even to confront the voice inside our head that tells us we can't or wouldn't want to spend time with Torah. So to you, I challenge you this question. I ask this question: what would life look like without the Torah in Sinai? What would it look like for you? Have you ever thought about being born without the Torah? Is that something that you could not imagine or could imagine? I'm going to ask Rabbi Bernie to walk about the sanctuary. I'm going to shut this.
Actually, I'd like to give a comment
I
about that.
expected that you would. I was hoping that you would start the conversation off, because I want to have a conversation about this. We received the Torah now in the wilderness. It's all of ours, everybody.
It would be anarchy. It would just be like the Wild West, if you think about it that way, with no law and order. It would be the toughest person who would survive, the one who would have gangs, the ones who would do whatever it was to survive and be the strongest. And that's what life would be without the Torah. However, I feel so glad that we have rules and regulations. Of course, with the rules and regulations, we have to obey the rules and regulations. And without that, it would be anarchy as well. So I don't know. I mean, if you think about it, the West, when you think about the West, you know, the ones with democracies, we follow the 10 Commandments in the Torah at Mount Sinai. Don't kill. No, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. Don't murder. Don't murder, don't steal, no adultery, and all the other laws that honor your parents, that sort of thing. We need those laws in order to live together. I mentioned it today during our talk, and I said, oh, when you leave, and when we left Egypt, we were free. We were no more longer slaves, but being free doesn't mean you're free to do whatever you want to do. We still need to be in a society with these rules and regulations, so my freedom doesn't impose on your freedom. So with that, if anybody has a comment about
Someone, if you have a comment,
anything,
please raise your hand so Rabbi Bernie can come and speak with you.
Sinai.
What would you
Yes.
do if you didn't have
We didn't
Torah?
have
Well, what
those
does
laws.
this mean to you?
So I think it gives us our identity and it gives us our story to make us different than everybody else. So we know who we are because of what we have learned from the Torah.
And of course, just to let you know, of course, we talk about the 10 Commandments, which really was 10 words. I'm not going to get into detail, but the whole Torah was given to the children of Israel really at Mount Sinai. All of the laws, all the 613 laws. So there was much more than just the abbreviated version that we talk about, the 10 Commandments, which, by the way, we're going to read tomorrow in our Torah reading. Anybody have a comment? Anybody else?
Sid? I have Vanna doing the microphone tonight, so. Vanna Horowitz.
The nightly news wouldn't be nearly as exciting if people actually like obeyed the 10 Commandments and obeyed the commandments that are in the Torah. The nightly news would be a lot more boring.
And that would be a blessing too.
And-
Steve
and-
Ring.
And of course, remember, I think Adele talked about it, being something that gives us identity. But remember, it's not just for us, it's for everybody. So that, to your point, if everybody, right, the world would accept that. Go ahead, Steve.
Really, you can't talk about the Torah as a singular thing.
A little louder.
You can't talk about the Torah as if what if we didn't have a Torah without asking the same equal question. What if there wasn't a Quran? What if there wasn't a Bible? So you have to lump them all three together and then ask the question. But you can't say, what if there's no Torah, but there's a Bible and a Quran? So it's got to be you all have three or you have none. Now the question is, what if you have none? That's the question.
Okay, but God didn't give the Quran at the Mount Sinai. God gave the 5 books of Moses to Moshe, we believe, not the
I
Quran and
understand.
not anything else.
But Muhammad gave the Quran.
No, but that's a different religion.
Well, no, but it's taking a religious document, book,
Mhm.
way of life, Bible, and erasing it.
They are,
You're
right?
erasing it.
They are, right?
Well, I'm saying you're erasing, right? You're
Yeah.
saying, what if it was erased? What
Okay,
if it didn't exist?
okay.
So.
But
that
but
didn't
but
exist.
the gift of this Yom Tov, what's the next festival? So they said it over there, Sukkot, right? The next festival is Sukkot. So I don't want to ruin your whole summer. But the last festival was 7 weeks ago. And it's funny that everybody celebrates Pesach and Sukkot. You'll notice that Pesach, lots of people have a Seder in their homes. Many Jews have a Seder in their home. Why? There's food. No, I'm serious. I'm not being a wise guy here. There's food and there's festivity and we have family and we get together and there's a meal. Why do people celebrate Sukkot as much as they do? It's also a very popular festival because there's going out to a booth and decorating and food. Shavuot, there's food, but it's ice cream, cheesecake. It it turns some people on, but it doesn't bring the masses. Torah should be bringing the masses, not the Quran. I mean, again, I'm not trying to say that's wrong, but for Muslims, that's their thing. Shavuot is not about the Quran. Shavuot is not about anything but God giving us the Torah, the gift of Torah at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai. And it should be probably, I would argue, it probably should be the most important of the Shalosh Regalim, the most important holiday, because it's the one that told us to celebrate Pesach. It's the one that tells us to celebrate Sukkot and also talks about Yom Kippur and the beginning of the year. So it doesn't actually say Rosh Hashanah, but it talks about the beginning of the year. So to me, it's the most important of the Shalosh Regalim. And look what happens. It's not well celebrated or observed. And that's a shame as far as I'm concerned. But to your point, God gave the Torah at Sinai. That's all we have to worry about. Let's not worry about anything that came after. When people say to me, do you believe in the Old Testament? I believe there is no Old Testament. There are the 5 books of Moses. There's Torah. The New Testament is a Christian concept. The New Testament is something that came after the 5 books of Moses were given at Sinai. So no, I don't believe in the Old Testament. I believe in the 5 books of Moses, what's known as Torah. That's Bible. That's Bible. I'm sorry. Someone else wanted to say something? Alan, talk nice and loud.
I would also add that something else was given at Mount Sinai, and that was our religion, because this is the basis of our identity of who we are as being Jews. And it took wandering in the desert for us to learn what being Jews are. And part of it, we were given a set of rules to follow to figure out how we could be Jewish and be an important group of people who lead the world, because we're the only ones that have survived all these years.
It's a beautiful point. You know, many people say, well, you know, Abraham was the first Jew, but he was the first person to accept the covenant with God. And we see other religions have fallen off of Abraham, right? So when you talk about Sinai, that's when our religion, our people, right, were started with that covenant, the nation, right? But then the religion, like you said, the religion started with the acceptance of the covenant and the acceptance of not the 10 commandments, but all 613, as you said, Rabbi. Right. And it's a really strong point to consider that when God gave us that gift of Torah, I cannot imagine living my life without having that Torah, having been given to the world. And then what happened was other people took branches from it. You know, I don't want to get back to the Quran, but even the Quran talks about the Garden of Eden. It talks about that. It makes mention about it. It makes mention about Adam and Eve. So that started in Torah, right? Do you want to go back there? He wants us. No, you don't.
Not
You only get one question?
It's up to you.
I'll
All
go.
right, see, we'll give,
I'll go.
we'll give him it.
Hold on, I'll go.
I know we take advantage, I should say, to say that, we just automatically think that, you don't murder anybody, you don't steal anything, but that really all came from the 10 Commandments, and we follow that here even today. Stevie.
So we had no Torah. We have nothing to read on Saturday, but we still have a Shabbat.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
He said, say that again. You say it. I don't want to say it.
We have no Torah. We have nothing to read on Shabbat morning. Do we not have a Shabbat? Does Shabbat not exist anymore?
No, so of course Shabbat, or the rabbi could answer this too. Shabbat exists because during creation, God created Shabbat. It was the 7th day. It was actually 6 days was creation, but actually it was created in 7 days that Shabbat was created. So we read the Torah on Shabbat because it's a time where we rest and we get together, and it's an opportunity for us to just understand more of the rules and regulations that we're supposed to understand, which we read on Shabbat. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Well,
but Sure.
I'll go further. I'll go
Okay.
further. God created the heavens and the earth and stopped. And that we read that in Torah, right? We read that in Torah. So if one could argue, if we didn't have Torah, we wouldn't read that. So now let's go to page 34 in the Siddur, Exodus 31. The people Israel shall observe Shabbat to maintain it as an everlasting covenant through all generations. It is a sign between me and the people Israel for all time that in 6 days Adonai made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day ceased from work and rested. Just so you're not familiar with that, Vishamru v'nei Yisrael. Now you're familiar, right? So if we didn't have the Torah, to your point, we wouldn't know about creation. Because it mentions creation. It's right there, Bereshit, in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. Of course, we can get further now and talk about what was before that, but we're not going to do that. Anyway, something to think about. What would the world look like if we didn't have this holiday? What would it look like? It's not just Shabbat. It's like Rabbi said, the laws, the stability of life. We'd look like Russia.
So just to let you know, Shavuot is also a harvest festival.
Right.
And that between Pesach and Shavuot, which was that 7 weeks, the winds, I'm not sure if it's called east winds, would come and we would never know if our harvest would be blessed or not. So we would also count the Omer and to hope that our harvest would be a blessing as well. So you have to realize that the giving in the Torah was a one-time event. You know, when they were in the desert and it was Sukkot, it was 40 years they lived in booths. So we celebrate that holiday as well. Pesach, of course, was very important. But Shavuot was a one-time event. It was not considered Matan Torah until later years, and it kind of morphed and became more of significant for the holiday for Shavuot, more than the harvest festival. But, you know, we all have to thank God that we're getting our fruits and vegetables in the due season. Otherwise, we would all starve to death.
And that was
So
the
that's
first
important.
planting on Pesach. We planted then, right? Because in Israel, that's when you start to plant. And then the first harvest was right after Yom Tov now. And the last harvest, the big one, the big harvest is, I'm not going to bother with the camera because you can't see them anyway. The big harvest is Sukkot. So the festivals are about food. They're about our nutrition and taking in sustenance.
We were one year we were in Israel for Shavuot, and we were invited to a kibbutz, Tshuva, which is outside of Jerusalem, and because they have a ceremony on the evening of Shavuot. Shavuot is only one day, so the night that would be tonight. They have a ceremony. They bring out their tractors because they still do some farming. And they let the kids play on the tractors. All of the children put on ceremonies. And what's even more remarkable is what happens afterwards. Outside, there are tables set up and they're filled with the bounty of the land, the dairy bounty of the land, and all kinds of dairy stuff. Was incredible spread of food. And a real privilege to be invited and to see. And they celebrate all the events that occurred, marriages, births, unfortunately deaths. They're all mentioned and talked about as part of the ceremony. It's really interesting because it relates a lot to Shavuot. For a non-religious kibbutz, they kind of celebrate it. They don't have the religious stuff, but it's really an interesting event to attend.
I appreciate it. Oh, there's another hand over there. And it's coming from one of our brilliant youths.
I just want to say back to Alan's point about what the world would be like if we didn't have rules and regulations, and that we would be what like Russia is like now and what it's been like, is a comment that one of our Hebrew school students made this year. So they were talking about the 10 commandments, and the student said there really should be an 11th commandment. And we asked what it should be, and he said, there shall be no war. And we all thought that was a really good point. I just wanted to share because I think that was a very smart remark from a second grader.
A second grader.
Yeah.
Wow. See, That's the great lesson. A second grader can teach us, right?
In talking about Shavuot, Rabbi, you mentioned Pesach and Sukkot, and I think that having the Torah kind of sets our calendar for us. You know, we go from one holiday to the next, and that's how we live our lives, and that's how we fill our days and our years.
And specifically, I believe Pesach is known as Chag HaAviv, right? Rabbi, isn't Pesach known as Chag HaAviv?
Like
I'm
Aviv,
just
the
checking my
springtime
memory, that's
holiday.
all right. And so that means we have to have Pesach in the spring, which means Shavuot has to be 7 weeks later, right? It says it there too. So it is about time. It is about space. It is a well-written document that probably only someone with the likes of God could put together, right? Because we don't always understand it. And that would make sense to me, that we don't always understand things. So we have to have interpreters. We get these great scholars that interpret the Torah, and they write midrashim. Midrashim are stories to try to make us understand the Torah, because at face value, you can't always understand it. Even the commentators, right? They're hard to understand some of that. So we have to accept the fact that something, someone, some person that is called God. You can never call God a person. You know what I'm saying? There's no way to describe God. Right? God is big. God is great. Something bigger than we did had to have written the Torah. And thank God we have it. And it was given in the wilderness, not in Israel. So it doesn't become just the children of Israel's product. It has evolved in other religions, to your point, but that's the foundation of all the laws, the foundation of the laws. And I can only imagine if we didn't have Shabbat, if we didn't have an opportunity to stop and to rest and to be able to worship and to take stock at what we've had over the past week. We have to have that. God knew we needed that. He didn't need it. He did it for us. Do you have something else to say, Mark? Okay, I'll come down.
By the way, while we're waiting for Mark, the reason why we're talking about this and talking about the Torah is because since this is the time of the giving of the Torah, it's a custom in Jewish temples and synagogues, shuls, all these different things, to read and learn Torah. Some people stay up all night until the morning because of Shavuot, because of the time of the giving of the Torah, to study Torah. So we feel that it's at least a few minutes of our time this evening to talk about some of the laws. Mark.
I'm sitting here thinking that the Torah gives us order. It gives us guides. It's a power to, basically it's a power to give us a path. And to paraphrase a line from a movie, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think the great responsibility is that we should do everything in our power to follow Torah and to try and I think over throughout history, when we try to do that, it also, for lack of a better word, puts a bullseye on us, and it makes it even that more important to live by it.
Very well said. Very well said.
Yeah, it's a bullseye. You got that right. We're a bullseye, but and I think in the end, the truth comes through.
The truth comes true. I have to tell you, to Rabbi Bernie's point about studying all night, it is a custom in tradition. It's modern. It actually started later on. Didn't start in the beginning. To stay up all night and study. I read something just the other day from a modern Orthodox rabbi in Rhode Island who said, "I'm not doing the all-night study anymore. It was a joy when he did it. It was fun when he did it, but it's become a challenge, and they don't love doing it anymore." You're supposed to love to learn. You're supposed to, right? The shakes. If it's raining outside on Sukkot, you're supposed to go out, say the Kiddush, and come back in. You can't dwell in the sukkah when it's raining because you won't love doing it. You won't enjoy the mitzvah, right? So you don't sit in the rain. If you're staying up all night, as you get older, it's harder. So they're doing a tikkun leil baboker in the morning.
Okay, people get up 4 a.m. now. I see it all the time.
They'll do it in the
Can't
morning
sleep.
where now they're had some time to sleep, and then they can enjoy the learning process and really take it in. And then don't take anything away from Shacharit. I remember when I was a kid in USY, we used to study all night. And we never went to services in the morning. We all went home to go to sleep after that. So balance. All right, this was wonderful. I want to thank you all for participating. That was the idea tonight, to participate in study. You have another?
I just want to say that the people didn't have any trouble staying up studying when they were on the verge of receiving the Torah, because of their excitement of receiving the Torah. But like thousands of years later, that excitement has
Waned.
worn off.
Is Wayne, right?
It's just studying, but receive the Torah. But like I said, 5,000 years ago, they were really
Right.
excited to stay up, knowing that the time was limited.
So if anybody's listening online. Yeah. What Sid said was that at the time of the revelation, when Torah was handed down at Sinai, the people stayed up all night because this was huge for them. They had never seen anything like this. This was big. But they didn't daven Shachris in the morning. Trust me, they didn't. But they did do that. And but we've evolved and we've turned into a different society. And it's not a shock to us anymore. We have Torah and we start it every year. We start it over again. The cycle keeps going. But unfortunately, we take it for granted. And we really should stop taking that great gift for granted. All right, let's finish with a Shehecheyanu, because we just studied, I think, and I want to tell you that I think this was one of our enjoyable study sessions, and I thank you all for participating. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
Shehecheyanu v'kiyimanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
And with that, we turn to page 51 and let us rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabech ladon hakol, latet gedula liyotze bereshit. Shelo asanu k'gei haratzot v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama. Shelo sam kolkenu kahem v'gor aleinu k'kol hamonam. V'anachnu korim u'mishtakavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notes shamayim v'yosei haaretz u'moshev yikaron b'shamayim imal u'shkinatu zo be'kavei miromim hu Eloheinu ein od emet malkeinu efesulato kakatu b'torato V'yadatayom, Hashevota el levavecha. Ki Adonai hu Elohim, Bashamayim imal, V'yal haaretz mitachat ein orein. Kakatu b'torah tech Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nema v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad Ushema. You may be seated. And before we do Mourner's Kaddish, just want to acknowledge the passing of Esther Babner, who has passed away recently, and the funeral was actually yesterday, late afternoon. Of course, is related to our Babner family that we have from Temple Ner Tamid. So Mourner's Kaddish, those observing outside, please join me on page 52. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabba v'yalmati v'rakirute v'yamlich malchute v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'galav v'zman kariv v'yimru amen Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam umeo maya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ah v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kucha b'richu Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiram bi'alma v'yamru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Oseh Shalom Bimramav Huya Aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'Yamru Amen. I'd like to call up Adele Luboski to make a couple of announcements. Lots of announcements. A few announcements. It's Shavuos.
Yeshakok, Rabbi Bernie, Rabbi Perlman, and Yeshakok to Shara for getting that award. Very proud of you, Shara. I can say, since she is my family, that I'm super proud of her. Just to remind everyone, services tomorrow morning are at 9 a.m. It's a slice of Torah, a slice of pizza, a slice of cheesecake, and ice cream. So if you haven't signed up, you can still come. We will have plenty of food, I am sure. So please join us tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Tomorrow evening, services are at 7 p.m. Yiska will be recited. Monday morning, services are at 9 a.m. They are here. Temple Ner Tamid, Temple B'nai Abraham will be joining us. And Yiska will be recited again. Lots of things happening at the temple. You know what they are. You know where you can find the information. Also, don't forget, next Friday night, we will have our installation, our temple installation, our sisterhood installation, and our men's club installation. So I hope you will all join us. And Chag Sameach. Okay. Also, this Thursday evening, there is an adult education Zoom meeting. We are joining the American Jewish University for online classes. So please come join us to discuss the available programs and our access to this avenue for Jewish learning. It will be on Thursday, June 9th at 7:45 p.m. You need to RSVP to Esther Kaufman or to Arlen Greenspan so you can receive the Zoom link. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
We are, I mean, we're gonna be da, 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 da. We're gonna have graduation, cap and gown, the whole thing. We're handing out doctorates in a few years. Yeah, it's gonna be good. Page 53, my favorite tune, Yigdal or
Yes.
Yom Tov. Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yishtabach nimtza v'einei el metziuto
Echad v'yen yachid ki yichudo ne'lam v'gam ein sof li'achduto.
Lo demul haguf v'yeino guf lo naroch elav kedushato.
Kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra rishon v'en reshit l'reshito.
Ino adon olam b'chol notzar yoreh gedulato u'malchuto.
Shefanu v'ato netano elam shesgulato v'tifbato.
Lo kam Yisrael k'Moshe o naviu mahabid et timunato.
Torat demet natan le'amo el ayad neviyo neman beito.
Lo yachal Yisrael v'lo yamir dato le'olamim lezulato.
Sofer v'yodea sitarenu mapid l'sof davar b'kadmato.
Gomer leish chesed k'mifalo noten l'rasha ra kerishato.
Yishlach l'kes yamin mishichenu liftov nechakeke yeshuato.
Meitim Yechayael Barov Chasto Baruch Adei Shem Dehilato.
Meitim Yechayael v'rov chasto baruch adei Shem tehilato.
Chag Sameach, everybody.
Sameach.
You can unmute if you want and wish each other a Chag Sameach. There's not many left, so Chag Sameach, everybody.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Go West.
That's it. Oh, yes, of course.
Very. I like to go shut. If there is no. That's what I said.